Happy Friday. We're gonna be looking at some Strats that I think are underrated. These are guitars that I just don't see talked about too often that I think are really great. Fender has been making the Stratocaster for over 70 years and they've made so many different model Strats. We get Strats from all different eras that come through the shop, but we really do see a lot of stuff from the last 25 years that is now discontinued, stuff you can't get new anymore. And I think that there's some really cool gems out there that I just don't see talked about as much today. So that's what we're gonna talk about. This video is not, oh, here's the best lines of Strats ever. Obviously, everyone knows about the Fender American Vintage series. If you're into Fender Japan, you know about the ST57, you know about the ST62. These are all guitars that are well documented for being great. This is just some stuff that I think deserves a little more attention. I've grabbed 5 guitars that I like. Let's talk about each one of them. This is in no particular order, so let's start with number 5, which is going to be the Fender American Original series. This is a Fender American Original 50 Strat. The American Original series replaced the American Vintage series, which has been Fender's long-running line of production-level reissue guitars. This started all the way back in 1982 with the US Vintage series, which would evolve into the American Vintage Reissue, or AVRI series, which would evolve into the American Vintage series. They took the reissue off the name, and then they eventually replaced that with these American Original guitars. Now, these aren't that different from the American Vintage series that came right before them. However, they did take a couple liberties, one of the biggest being that they changed the fretboard radius. So this is a 50s reissue Strat, but it has a 9.5 inch radius. So it's a little bit flatter than your typical 7.25 inch radius that you'd get on a vintage Strat. Whether 50s or 60s, you almost always get a 7.25 inch, a little bit rounder radius for a proper vintage Strat. A lot of players like this. I have no problem with it. I do slightly prefer the rounder necks. Some people like them to be a little bit flatter. So if that's you and you want something that's otherwise very traditional, but you kind of have a little more room to bend and whatnot, this can definitely be cool. I think these are a really interesting guitar because at the tail end of the American Vintage run, they did the American Vintage Hot Rod series, which are pretty well celebrated today. I still see people talk about these, where they had a little bit bigger frets, they had the flatter radius, they had some of those kind of quality of life changes that some players like. For good reason, I think a lot of people still like those, but they tend to gloss over these as they weren't as out there as the Hot Rod series. They were a little bit more traditional, but not 100% traditional. These came out in the 2010s and then were fairly recently replaced with the American Vintage 2 series, which kind of goes back to the original American Vintage specs. And I've seen since the American Vintage 2 line has come out, these have not really gained any notoriety. These have kind of been forgotten about to some extent. In the market today, I see these actually going for a little bit less than most of the other American-made reissue guitars. So if you're open to that flatter radius, I would definitely check out the American Original series. They sound great. This one in particular's got a nice fat 50s neck on it. And it's just a great straight ahead 50 Strat. Proper lacquer finish, which feels nice. What's not to love? We are once again looking at Fender US, but this time we're not going vintage, we are going more modern, and that is the Fender American Deluxe series. Now, just like the American Original series, this has since been replaced. This line originally started back in 1998 and went all the way until around 2016 when it was replaced by the American Elite line. That was then replaced by the American Ultra line, and then now the American Ultra 2 line. They are making so many different versions of these Strats, it's sometimes hard to keep track of. But that style Strat started all the way back in 1998 with the American Deluxe series. Now these would see a few different iterations over the years. This particular example is from 2005. So you'll get a 9.5 inch radius all the way up and down the neck. Whereas a little bit later, towards like 2010s, you start to get a compound radius, which I think is a really great touch. But no matter where you go in the American Deluxe line, I think they're all really solid Strats. And due to them being replaced over and over again, I just don't see people remembering these. These are some of the best value guitars on the market if you like stuff that's more modern and you want a proper US Fender. These really have not gone up in value, and if anything, they've probably gone down in value just because the price point hasn't really changed in the last decade on these. You can still find these in like the $1,000 range, which is half of what you can get a newer like American Ultra 2 for. So definitely great value there. Some of the features on these tend to include the locking tuners. As I said, the flatter radius, in the later years a compound radius, and most of them will have noiseless pickups. Now this one has been modified and is now sporting some DiMarzio humbuckers. However, that was not factory for this guitar, but on this particular example, it's definitely a cool upgrade. I've noticed in general, whenever Fender does a more like modern series of Strat or Tele, as soon as it gets replaced, the old ones don't really get celebrated too much. And I think if you're looking for value, the best value out there is to go look at some of the older series, as they have a lot of the same cool appointments, but they're just not as talked about today. So I think it's a great opportunity to get a great Strat for not crazy money. I actually have a Tele from this series that I really enjoy. Mine is from when they started using the N3 noiseless pickups, and I actually really like them. Moving to another Strat with humbuckers, here we have the Fender Classic Player Stratocaster in Mercedes Blue, and this is from their Fender Custom Shop Design series, which were really great. Now, this is a Mexico-made Strat. This is pretty much the top end of what they were doing in Mexico at the time that they made this. This particular example is from 2014, which most of the Custom Shop Design series you'll see kind of in that year range-ish. This is probably the least traditional of the ones that I'm aware of, as you get these, what they call wide range special humbuckers. These are not full wide range humbuckers. They're the size of a regular humbucker, but they don't sound like it at all. If you're going for something more like a Seymour Duncan SH4 or even a PAF style pickup, this is not that at all. These are way like muddier, but from that I think you get some really cool character, so I do still really like these. But just a very unique guitar. Mercedes Blue is not a color that they do frequently, and I wish that they did it more, as I think it's really cool. But I mean, this kind of has all the appointments. You get the humbuckers, you get a bound neck, and you get a matching headstock. The tuners on this particular example have actually been swapped out. This one now has locking tuners, but from the factory you would get these standard like F-style 70s tuners that are not locking. Very sick Strat overall. I really like this. This is my favorite Mexican Fender I've ever owned, and one of the only Mexican Fenders I still own. Just super unique, and there's not really another guitar that they have that does this thing. There's a lot of cool stuff in that Custom Shop Design series. There was a very cool 60s style Strat they did, which I like that, but I don't think that one's as underrated as there's other options out there I'd probably prefer. But given that this is so unique, I had to include the Custom Shop Design Classic Player Strat in Mercedes Blue, or really just anything from that series that's kind of more unique like this. Let's plug this in. You knew we had to talk about something from Fender Japan. This is the Fender Vintage Special Stratocaster, or VSP. This is a pretty short-lived run in Japan that was kind of a continuation of their higher tier 50s reissue Strat. Back in 1982, Fender Japan began producing Stratocasters and Telecasters, and they all came in 3 different tiers. They'd have a base level tier that have poly finish, and then they have the nicer tiers where you get lacquer finish, and then USA pickups and even USA electronics. That would pretty much carry through all of their lineage. There'd always be different tiered Strats and Teles, as well as other models. And towards the end of the Crafted in Japan era, they made the Vintage Special series, which was their highest tier Strat. This particular one has a really nice lacquer finish both on the neck and the body, and from the factory you get these DiMarzio pickups, which I think sound really, really great. This comes right at the end of the Crafted in Japan era and would get replaced, so it's a pretty short-lived run. Now you'll see the Fender Japan Heritage Stratocasters replacing this, but I think these are really cool and I just don't see many people talk about them. This has a way different neck profile than the American original 50 Strat we looked at first. This one, they call it like a flat oval. This is somewhere between like C and D territory, but it's a lot slimmer and just not as fat as the American original. Interesting choice for a 50s reissue. It's one of those guitars that kind of has like all the right specs if this is what you're looking for. So the people that have them, I don't think tend to sell them too often, which is why I just don't see them up for sale. So when I saw this one come up, I knew we had to have it, and I'm really glad that I jumped on it, as this is a really solid Strat. Let's plug this one in. This is the last guitar we are going to talk about here today, and this is a guitar from my personal collection. This is a 2018 Fender American Professional Stratocaster, but it has an all rosewood neck. What would that have been, 8-10 years ago? They made a pretty decent handful of these guitars where they did the American Pro Series, but full rosewood neck, and I think they're awesome. They sound so different than a regular Strat. They feel so different than a regular Strat. They also did a Tele at the same time, which is also cool. But I think these are so unique. The attack on these is just, I don't know, it just sounds a little different. It's a little darker across the board, and just, it's its own thing that I don't see talked about that much. I don't think Fender is still making anything with a full rosewood neck right now. If they are, please let me know in the comments. But I don't see these very celebrated, and I don't understand why, as they're cool. They don't sound like your typical Strat. You definitely don't get as much snap as you would with a maple neck, even if you have a maple neck with the rosewood fretboard. This still kind of takes it a step further. Something I really enjoy. Obviously, we all know Strats can get quite bright, so having that neck like this just kind of, I don't know, evens it out. This is a very balanced guitar. Whenever I think of this guitar, I just think about a Strat that isn't super pokey. It just sits kind of right where you want it to in the mix. That's a pretty important thing. This is a very special guitar for me. I use it all the time. I think that will continue. This has the Fender V-Mod pickups, which are a little more on the modern side, but I think they're one of my favorite pickups that they ever used for their kind of standard US series. Pickup wise, this has the Fender V-Mod series, which they were using in their American Professional Strats at the time. Definitely one of my favorite sets of like standard US pickups that Fender has ever used. They're supposed to be like vintage modified. They're kind of in the modern realm, kind of in the vintage realm, but it sounds like a very full, fat Strat, so I like these. Let's plug this one in and see what it sounds like. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out with us today. Had a lot of fun playing all these Strats. Did not have as much fun making sure that they all stayed perfectly in tune, as Strats can definitely be temperamental if you don't have the bridges blocked, but these things must happen. You just gotta get them in tune. You can use that or not. 3 of the 5 Strats in this video are actually for sale on flashforthegear.com. So if you'd like more info on those, we would love if you checked out our site. We have, I think, over 100 Strats right now. So if you're looking for a Strat, we would love if you checked out our inventory. You can scan the QR code here or go to flashforthegear.com. Let us know down below in the comments which some of your guys' favorite underrated guitars are. It can be a Strat, it can be something else, but let us know what you like. If it's something that we have, maybe we'll do a video on it in the future. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. It all really does help out. And we will see you in another video soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this one as well.